Hello again, everyone. I'm Dr. George Simon, and welcome to another edition of the new Character Matters program. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we have faced for some time now, and that affects every aspect of our lives, from our world affairs, to our community relations, to our individual and family relationships. Every aspect of our lives has been affected by the erosion of character and the erosion of its importance in our lives. Toward this end, I've spent my professional lifetime writing about and speaking about this all-important issues. I believe that we are on the cusp of a new age, where we once again come to our senses about the supreme importance of character, and also rediscover all that it takes to help form a healthy, functional, social human being, capable of not only functioning well and non-destructively within their families and other social environments, but also making a positive contribution, helping to create a better world. It all hinges on character. It always has, and it always will, regardless of where else we try to place our faith. And today, I want to talk specifically about the misguided ways in which we try to solve our social problems, especially in the wake of great tragedies, like the tragedy that occurred just last week while I was taking a brief break, and that I thought many times I might speak about. But I wanted to wait on purpose until some of the passions had died down, and until some of the very predictable proposed solutions had already been discussed. We do need reasonable laws and structures to help us do well within society and to help us stay safe. So there will be a discussion about whether or not more stringent rules, structures, and laws are necessary. However, laws cannot force the issue of character. They are no replacement for it. We have forgotten not only the supreme importance of character, but all that it takes to forge it in a human being. We have forgotten that it's a long, painstaking, arduous process that involves much cooperation between mindful, parenting, and other support in the environment to instill within a developing human being the kinds of values and internal controls that will enable an individual to function well and to not pose any danger, but to be able to make instead a positive contribution and help make the world a better, safer place. We have forgotten all that it takes to groom character in a human being. And we have forgotten that it's character and character alone that can actually accomplish what we sometimes delude ourselves into thinking that our rules can do for us. Ask yourself this question. Do you refrain from committing mayhem? doing horrible things? Do you refrain from any of those things because there may or may not be a rule against it? We human beings are complex creatures, and yes, we do need rules and structures and protections and laws. And we do have to have an orderly way of depriving bad actors of their freedoms when necessary to protect the rest of us. That's all well and good. But rules cannot possibly do, laws cannot possibly do what only character can. And we have forgotten that it takes very conscientious caretakers working hour by hour, day after day, year after year in consort with cooperative other entities to help instill in a developing human being the kinds of internal resources and controls that will enable that person to function adaptively within their environment, to manage stresses that are inevitable in life, and to deal with others in a productive manner. We have forgotten not only the supreme importance of character, but also its power and what it takes to help develop it in a fellow human being. And that's why I've spent my professional lifetime writing and speaking about it. Because nothing can do for us what only character can. No law, no rule, no structure, no punishment, no threat of punishment can do for us what only character can. This problem did not develop overnight. It's been insidious and incremental, a very slippery slope. It happened so subtly and over such a long period of time that we barely realized what was happening until we found ourselves in the situation we find ourselves now. And I'd like to relate a little story that brought home the point to me very vividly when I was taking some time off last week and first heard about the tragedy that occurred at Robb Elementary and was tempted to say something right away, but knew it would be better to wait till all the dust had settled and passions had calmed down. I knew the debate that would rage. So I wanted to be clear-headed, and I wanted my potential audience to be a little bit more open. But the story I'd like to relate has to do with a couple of incidents that I witnessed. Once in a small town at a roundabout. These are relatively new things for many cities in America, although they have been popular in Europe and other places for some time. I witnessed in this particular traffic roundabout how despite all the signs and despite the convenience of design and despite the thoughtfulness that went into the construction of the apparatus to help it operate smoothly, I witnessed that almost every driver, without exception, brought their sense of entitlement, brought their determination to get there a little quicker than anybody else, brought their impatience, brought their other weaknesses of character to the enterprise. And the results were so predictable, from people almost hitting one another and screaming at one another and blowing their horns at one another and making gestures out the window And it occurred to me, if we have reached a point where it's virtually impossible for us to bite our tongue when we feel offended, if it's virtually impossible for us to back off the accelerator when it would do us well to do so, if it's virtually impossible for us to wait our turn, if it's virtually impossible for us to control ourselves in such little things because of the horrible attitudes that we have been used to incorporating within ourselves, if it's virtually impossible for us to control ourselves in these little things, if it's impossible for us to not say that demeaning thing to our partner, those words that we cannot take back and that we know from past experience have to damage the relationship. If we can't do that, how in the world could we ever refrain from the unthinkable when stresses mount to the point that all of our resources are exhausted? Or when we feel the world has hurt us so badly that we want to terribly lash out? If we haven't got the internal mechanisms to self-regulate in those small things, how in the world can we handle the big stresses of life? And this, my friends, is the ages-old role of character. There is no substitute, period. Think what you like, believe what you like. History is our teacher, and we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of history when we fail to heed its lessons. There is no substitute for character. It needs to regain its status of supreme importance. We are all in this together. So it is incumbent on all of us to help each other develop and solidify the kinds of internal resources, the values, the principles, and especially the controls that will allow us to operate in this world without being a danger to one another, and more strikingly able to make a positive, constructive contribution. And toward that end, I'm going to keep sounding both the alarm and the drumbeat. All of my experience as a professional, helping not just the significantly character disturbed, but also individuals who have been victimized in some way in their relationships. All my years of experience helping in troubled relationships and situations, examining the root causes of abuse of various types. All of that experience has brought it home to me so clearly, and so I will keep bringing it to you. Discuss as you will what kinds of laws we may need, what kinds of rules we may need, what kinds of threats we may have to impose in society for rule breakers. Discuss as you will, craft as you will, all of the external mechanisms you think will help make us safe. But the bottom line will always be, as it has always been, that there is no substitute for character. There is no substitute for a human being who has developed well enough to have embraced certain values, to have instilled within oneself certain controls, certain abilities and skills that make it possible to be a loving, functional, contributing member of society, to have a wholesome relationship with another human being, a productive relationship, and to create a climate in which children can come to know the importance of and instill within themselves those same values and principles. What breaks my heart is what it's likely to take in the way of continued social dysfunction, relationship dysfunction, personal dysfunction, for us to come to our senses. Let me tell you what is new and what is not new. Allow me, if you will, to start with what is not new. Bullying, not new. Feeling estranged from your social group, not new. Being so mad at the world that you want to lash out and you feel someone must pay, not new. It's not new to have problems related to one's mental health. It's not new to suffer periods of depression. It's not new to have internal emotional conflicts raging. It's not new to feel so hurt, so bitter, and at the edge of despair that you want to seriously lash out. It's not new to be so angry and upset that you want to hurt somebody, even kill somebody. None of that's new. What's new? What's new is lacking both the internal resources and the ability and the control and the self-management skill not to do the unthinkable, even though you're hurting. Hurting is the human condition. There's always going to be something. This life, in so many ways, is painful, much of the time. What's new is the sense of entitlement and the lack of compunction to do what in former times would have been thought unthinkable. And we can point the finger anywhere you want, but it can't obscure the truth that our lack of character development is the culprit, and things will not really significantly turn around until we're more universally ready to accept that fact and understand what it takes to restore not only character's rightful place of importance in our lives and in our society, but recover those values and principles that will help us instill it in our children, in ourselves, and one another, and come to expect it once again, and especially to reinforce it. This is exactly what all the cooperators in the character formation of children and young people concerned themselves with for so long. Yes, all kinds of other things were important too, but the main task of helping a person enter society to be a productive and decent member of it was to be mindful of how their character was being formed. How well were they doing at internalizing the values and controls necessary to be a positive contributing member? How well were they becoming socialized? How are they doing at internalizing the values and the controls necessary to be well and to do well in the world, to appropriately self-regulate, to manage emotions, to have the capacity to love? This was the prime task, and we have forgotten not only how important the task is, but what it takes to accomplish the task. It's a daunting task, to be sure. So I'll keep talking about it. I'll keep writing about it on my blog at drgeorgesimon.com. I sincerely hope you'll avail yourself of the many free articles on the blog. And I also hope you'll avail yourself of my books, especially my most recent book, Essentials for the Journey, Embracing and Living the 10 Commandments of Character, those proven timeless principles for a psychologically healthy and spiritually rich life. So until next time, I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that you'll ponder carefully what I've tried to convey today, and I look forward to talking to you again on another edition of the new Character Matters. Take care. It's part of being human, always has been. It's also new. To premeditatedly and callously plan the kinds of horrific acts that were once limited to a few hardened individuals, and certainly weren't expected of children.